Okay, my fellow binge watchers, you know what time is it? It's the time for all of us to kick back, relax, and spend a little time just talking about what we've been watching, reading, playing, what we've been doing. How have you been doing? So I just finished recording and editing my review for End of the Effing World Season 2, which I loved. I loved it so much. Not as much as I loved Season 1, but maybe I did, you know? Kind of in a different way. But anyway, that video should already be up by the time that this video is up. So go watch that. So there's been quite a lot of interesting things to watch lately. I've been watching the Watchmen show on HBO. I've been meaning to get to His Dark Materials. I haven't got to it yet because I've been focused on Watchmen. And I've also been watching The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. Both of these shows I'm having so much fun with. So let's start with Watchmen. So first of all, I have to say that I have not read the comics. I've been meaning to. I've ordered it off of Book Depository, but I haven't read it yet. And you can already tell watching this show that it does expect you to know a lot of things. I have watched the movie, the Zack Snyder Watchmen movie, which I really, really liked, but I know that changes stuff from the comics a little bit, and you can tell watching the show that they do kind of expect you to get a little references. I think at this point, I've watched enough, movies and TV shows and stories to recognize references without actually getting the reference. So every here and there's some sort of setup or a character says something and you just know that you are supposed to get that. Like, you were supposed to get that reference. And I didn't, because I didn't read the comics. But it's all interesting enough for me to actually want to go out and read it. But even if you didn't read the comics, I would say at least go and watch the movie, because it does build on that stuff a lot. It is very much a sequel. It happens in the same world. And again, it doesn't really continue the events of the movie, I think, as much as it continues the events of the comics. But still, the movie can give you a good foundation. Because so far, I'm 3 episodes in, and it's just a really well-crafted, thoughtful show so far. One of the most interesting aspects of it to me is that recently I watched The Boys, which kind of handles a similar question about, vigilantes and superheroes. And The Boys takes a very different approach. The Boys says, what if superheroes were corporately owned and, they were just completely morally bankrupt, and that is the world that exists there. With Watchmen, it's a bit more subtle. It presents superheroes a bit more as morally ambiguous characters, much like, most people are. And the HBO show doesn't really deal with superheroes. It's not really a superhero show, or at least not yet, but it's more of like exploring the consequences of a world in which superheroes existed, or a world in which vigilantes, who are these morally ambiguous characters, played a major role in how more specifically the US government came to be in this sort of like alternative history. Anyway, so far I'm loving it. Jeremy Irons is so good. Regina King is, I think, one of the best actresses working today. And The Haunting of Hill House, I don't have too much to say about it just yet because I'm only 2 episodes in, but it's one of those shows that I've been meaning to watch for a long time, because I don't think I've really ever watched any horror TV shows, because for whatever reason the concept of a TV show centered around like a horror story is weird to me, because so much of horror stories are like, so much of them is going to be about like building suspense and maybe jump scares, things like that you kind of build up to a certain point in time, like for example in a movie, and then once it happens, a lot of the tension is diffused. So in long form storytelling, like in a TV show, I really didn't see how that could work. But The Haunting of Hill House is actually so much more than that. It is a pretty compelling story. Like, I really want to get back into that show and see what happens. But they're able to pull off the suspense and horror elements of it pretty well. So I was watching the first episode on a plane. I went to Barcelona last week on a business trip, and I was watching it on my iPad, and I got super into it. And the girl who was sitting next to me, she had like a glass of water. So you probably know where the story is going. Like, she had a glass of water on her tray, and one of the jump scares just freaking got me, and I knocked over her drink. Luckily, most of it didn't land on her, but I mean, I tried to play it off as something funny, like, haha, no, she wasn't laughing. I think just generally watching horror movies and now TV shows on airplanes is a very good fit, especially if the entire plane is dark. On a flight that I had, I think it was a couple of months ago, I had a flight from San Francisco back to Israel, and that's a 14-hour flight. And by some magic of the universe, I got upgraded to business class. So this was United, so this was like the United Polaris business class. It was awesome, like that. It never happens. And on that flight, I watched This Is Us. No, I didn't. This Is Us is the show on Hulu. I watched the movie Us by Jordan Peele. Which I have a lot to say about. I mean, I liked it, but I had some problems with it. But it is a very, very suspenseful movie, and they pull off it's not jump scares. It's just like you are afraid. And watching that like in the dark airplane in this like little bed that I had there for myself was just the perfect setting for it. I don't remember why I went down this road. What was I talking about? Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about what I've been reading. Whoa, okay, that's better. So I've been doing a lot of reading. There are two YouTubers, like booktubers, that I really like, that I watch a lot. One is Murphy Napier, that I think I've mentioned on this channel before, and the other one is Daniel Green. Both of them really, really good. And sometimes I just watch their channels and I'm jealous. I want to talk about these books as well. So I figured I'd just kind of splice it in, spruce it in, schmooze it in these videos. So since I've been ingesting a lot of books lately, both in written form and audiobook form, I've just become a little fascinated with how the cover of a book and just the whole way that a book is presented changes the experience. So with these Joe Abercrombie books, these are the first books by him that I read. I think these are the first books that he's written. This is probably the best looking box set and the best looking covers that I've seen. And there's there's something genius about the whole presentation of this story. Because the cover of the book and the way that the book itself feels, it does so much justice to the story itself. So I've been reading, I read the first one and loved it. I just started the second one as well. I mean, I started the second one, but I'm going to wait until I finish the other two books I'm reading before I continue. I also own the audiobooks, which are also, are narrated. I thought I liked Michael Kramer, and I do, the guy who narrates Wheel of Time and all the Sanderson books, but Stephen Pacey, who does the First Law trilogy, I would listen to him, just read recipes. I would listen to him read, just a manual for a printer from 20 years ago. Is that a good enough example for something that would be boring? That guy lays it the fuck down. He's so good. And also, so it's been one of the most immersive and amazing book reading experiences with the First Law trilogy. I fully expect this to be one of my favorite series ever. So in sharp contrast to that, I've been trying to get through The Black Prism by Brent. This is part of the Lightbringer series, which I also heard a lot of good things about, and I'm really struggling with it so far. I'm, I think, about 200 pages in, and so far, it's just like, sometimes when you're reading a book, the author of the book disappears, and you no longer think about this person who sat down and wrote this book. And that's always the case for me with anything by Brandon Sanderson. The stuff from Joe Abercrombie is definitely like that. All the Wheel of Time stuff that I read, like, I don't think about the person who sat down and wrote the words and maybe thought that something was funny, or when there's like a sex scene or something, I don't imagine them like sitting there like So with Brent Weeks, at least in this book, I haven't read any of his other stuff, all the characters feel like him trying to say things about, the way that the world works, or like his own personal opinions or his fantasies, or I don't know. I can't get over reading this book and just imagining the guy writing it all the time. He is not disappearing out of the story. It was the same way when I tried to read Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. A very well written book. But I got through the first one and I did not like it at all. And I got through about halfway through the second one and I was just like, dude, I'm just like, this reads like a manifest from this dude, not like a story with, characters who come to life on their own. So if you've read Brandon Sanderson, welcome to the Binge Watchers set. By the way, the camera's off because I'm holding it. If you've read some of the stuff by Brandon Sanderson, like for example the Stormlight Archives, so there's a character in there who has depression, and after you finish reading that, and there's like a few other characters who struggle with their faith and how they believe in God or gods or whatever, religion in general. And once you get through some of those books and you snap back to reality and you think about the author and you're like, how was he able to write that without experiencing depression himself, without really having a crisis of faith? And that, I think, is a sign of a really, really good author that knows how to do character work. From everything I read about the Lightbringer series, I know that should be the case there as well. So I'm giving it another chance. But so far, I've really been struggling with it. Okay, so back to TV shows. On my to-be-watched list for the next week, I have another business trip coming up. I'm going to London tomorrow, so I'll see if I can squeeze in, a couple of hours of Netflix on the plane ride. So I want to keep going with The Haunting of Hill House because I know there's going to be a new season for that soon. Watchmen, I think there are 2 new episodes or 1 new episode for me to watch, so definitely I'm gonna keep going with those because it's been a good time so far. His Dark Materials, I think I'm gonna wait until there are more episodes with that. And there are actually a few shows that I have watched, and I don't know why, but I didn't make reviews for. One is Carnival Row, which was like, it had a lot of potential. It was good. There was a lot of good about it, but also I think there are a few marks that it misses. I think I'm going to put together a review for that and get that up on the channel. And I also watched the Umbrella Academy a while ago, and I don't know why I didn't make a review for that. I did really, really like that one. I want you to let me know what you've been, watching, reading, playing. I love talking about that stuff, so please put that in the comments down below. Let me know. What have you been doing lately?